Hi friends, welcome to Julia at Home. I'm Julia, and on this channel I share with you resources and encouragement and inspiration for homeschooling. Today's video is on resources for kids about US elections. So if you don't know, we have a big presidential election coming up. It's actually in around 50 days from when I'm filming this video, so I wanted to get this video out for you soon. So I promise I have curriculum videos coming out, but I wanted to get this out. Hopefully you can see some of these resources and be able to use some of them before the election if you want to. I believe most of you that watch my channel are in the United States, but just in case you are not, or in case you haven't been following along with the news and politics, I'm going to give you a quick view of what's going on. So in the United States, we have a president, the executive branch, and we also have members of Congress that are all elected. The president of the United States is elected every 4 years, and they can each serve up to 2 terms, so 2 4-year terms. So sometimes you'll hear them running for re-election. Currently, one of the candidates has been president before, and one is the current vice president. We also elect our members of Congress to go for our federal Congress. There's 2 senators for each state, and the people of the state elect each senator every 6 years. They have 6-year terms, and but they won't both come up at the same time, if that makes sense. You have 2 senators, you won't be electing both at the same time. They're staggered. So about a third of the senators in the whole country are up for election every 2 years. And then the House of Representatives, the other side of our Congress, are all elected every 2 years. So they have to get reelected every 2 years. So every 4 years, we have the big presidential election. So there'll be the president, there'll be senators on there, again, a third of the senators, and all of the members of the House of Representatives. There's also almost always local elections and state elections too. This video focuses more on our federal system because while state systems are mostly similar, some of them have some differences. And then on the 2 years in between the 4-year presidential elections, we have what's called the midterm elections. So, for example, this year's 2024, we have a big presidential election. In 2022, we had what's called a midterm election, where the president is not up for re-election, but a third of the senators and all the House of Representatives are. So I hope that makes sense to you. And yeah, again, this is a pretty big deal every time there's a presidential election, but it just seems to get more and more important. And there's a big difference between the 2 candidates that are running and the visions that they have for the country. So it's, I think, even more important than it has been maybe way in the past. My children that I'm teaching this year, I have a preschooler, a kindergartner, a 4th grader, and a 6th grader, so it really ranges in the ages there. And I'm planning on using a lot of these resources with all of them. There's picture books I have that are wonderful for that younger group, the preschool, kindergarten years, although they totally are relevant for older kids as well, and I will have my older kids listen to them. And then I have some resources that are more for my older children that I really won't be doing with the younger ones. I mean, they'll probably be around, but that are aimed at the older ones. And those are great for older ages, especially some videos I have, really even up into adults. They're really good explainers on certain aspects of the process. So I'll be sharing all of those with you, and then you can go ahead and figure out which ones will work best for your family. I'm going to go ahead and switch to a top-down view now so you can see the resources more clearly. This is a Google Doc that should be available linked below, and it just is a kind of an outline of what I'm doing because I've just started doing this unit with my kids. Often I'll share things after we do it, but again, I wanted to share it before this time. So there may be some changes as I go, but this is the outline that I made. I'm going to share with you. We are starting with how voting works and voting in general, which is a really great place to start with everybody, and it's a really good thing to focus on with the younger kids. It's really something that they can, understand. So I have a couple picture books for this. This one is Vote for Our Future, and it is about voting. I don't know how else to describe it. Here you go. It's about the kids at the school encouraging their adults in their lives to vote and talking about why it matters. And this is, I believe it's about like a mayoral election technically, but it is about an election. This one is about voting for a class field trip. So it's just about voting on an issue or something you want to do in general. And so it's a great way to introduce voting, not just in the context of elections. And I also have a note on my outline that I want to vote for things as a family. So we have before actually voted on like which board game we're playing first, or what movie we're going to watch that night. Or I'm also probably going to practice doing this more of like what dinner we're having that night, and then the other one will be the next night and stuff like that, just to get the idea and practice of what voting is. There's also, I'm going to mention here, it's not on the outline, but there is a really good Daniel Tiger episode if you have preschoolers about voting, where I believe they vote in their playground as to whether they're getting a slide or swings. I think that's what it is. And it also deals with, I believe Daniel votes for the thing that doesn't get chosen, and so it deals with how he works through that. So if you have preschoolers or young kids, that might be a good resource to try to look for. It's a PBS Kids, Daniel Tiger. Anyway, next, after talking about voting, I am going to just do a review for my kids, a review for the big ones and more of an introduction for the little ones on the United States government and how it works with our 3 branches. So I'm just going to actually give kind of like a mini lecture on that. I was a government major in college, and I went to law school here in the United States. So I feel comfortable doing that. But if you feel like you need a refresher, or you feel like you need something else, I'm sure you could find a YouTube video on it. I decided I'm just going to kind of go over it with them. We'll probably make a visual chart of the 3 branches. But I also have a little bit more information. So this book is The Story of Our Constitution, and it talks about the story of how the Constitution was created. And so specifically, it talks about the compromises that they had to make. So one of the big compromises was the Electoral College, and how which is how our presidents get elected. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. That's definitely for like the older set, and can be complicated even for adults. So yeah, there'll be more on that a little bit later. But so it talks about how our system kind of came to be. And then I also have, let's see, Grace Goes to Washington, which this does talk about the 3 branches a bit here. And this is more so like in the context of creating a student government. So it talks more about the legislative branch here as well, because that's important too. We will also be voting for our representative. We only have one representative here in Vermont and in the United States House, because we are a super small state population-wise. So we'll be voting for a representative, and I'd have to double check. I don't think either of our senators are up for re-election this year. And each state has 2 senators. So I'll be going over all that basically with the kids. And these are some books to help with. If you have younger ones, you could just read this and move on. This is, again, probably a little bit older. I have already read this with my kids when we did this time period in history. We really did a deep dive on the American Revolution, the formation of the Constitution. So this will be more of a review for them. I also have lots of Constitution things here. So this is like a little quick study of the U.S. Constitution that I've had since I was in college. And it's really, it has like all of the amendments and all of it really tiny lettering. And so I just keep this because I find it handy. This is not the whole Constitution. This is the preamble, and it's a picture book, and it's pretty. This is, it has information up here. But mainly what it is it's the preamble in text with pictures representing the country and the things that the preamble is talking about. And then just more pictures. So, it does have the Constitution in the back here. But I wouldn't just read the Constitution to the children. They're not gonna, it would be pretty dry, and yeah, you could highlight some areas, but I wouldn't recommend just reading the whole thing through to especially younger ones. And then this is another one I just got actually on the United States Constitution, where it has more explainers on each part. And so we might go through, this is not on, the book is on my list, but I haven't quite figured out exactly what I'm gonna do with it yet. I don't wanna read through the entire thing because it's pretty long. So I might just pick and choose some, like we might just read like a bit about Article 2 and whatnot as we go. So because not all of it is going to be relevant to the election process, right? There's also, I don't have anything to show for this, but you could find the Schoolhouse Rock song, I'm Just a Bill, is a really great explanation of how the legislative body works to pass bills. And then focusing more on the executive branch, or the president is the executive branch. I have more resources here. So these books, I don't think I'm going to use both of them. I've had this one for a long time. It's an older one, but it is good. And I have, this one's newer. So I think I'm probably going to do this one just because it is newer. And I think I've read this one to them. Well, I don't know if we read this before, but anyway, you could do one of these and not both, but this is like a really good kind of in-depth explanation of things. There's a little bit of repetition here amongst the different resources. So like if you wanted to just grab one of these books and just do that, you could, especially I think for like 3rd grade and up, that would be a good option. For younger ones, I would just stick with the picture books. So we got Sophia Valdez, Future Pres. This is part of the books that it has like Iggy Peck, Architect, and Rosie Revere, Great Engineer. I actually like to collect these because I love this series. And this is Sophia Valdez, Future Pres. And she just wants to help her community. So it's about her trying to do things to help her community and kind of just showing what like leadership is and how she tries to get things done here. So it's not as much about elections as about leadership and like trying to help your community. And I thought this would be a good spot to put it because ideally that's what we're looking for in a president. And this is The Next President. This is a cool book. So this goes through the different presidents, and here, I don't know if you can see the whole thing right now, but it goes through different presidents and like what they were doing at different ages, like before they were president. So here, when William Henry Harrison became president, 9, there were 14 future presidents alive, and it kind of tells you what they were doing. So yeah, I really like this book. I highly recommend it. I think it's super fun. And then at the end, it's talking about, you know, today, at least 10 of our future presidents are probably alive today. So it talks about what they may be doing, what the requirements are. I think this is a few years old, so I think this is from before the 2020 election, but it's very cool, and I highly recommend it. This is more of an encyclopedia, and this is our country's presidents, and it just goes through all, I think it goes up through Trump, does it? I don't think Biden's in here. Oh no, Biden is in here. Okay, back. So it goes through Biden. Yeah, and it just has like a spread or two on each of the presidents and some other information here as well. We also won't be reading through this whole thing. But as we go through history, I'm going to focus a little bit more on highlighting the presidents that, you know, are president at the time we're talking about and teaching the kids a little bit more about them. So I thought this was a good resource to have. We might look, especially at some of the more modern presidents as well. I have these 2 picture books to talk a little bit more about campaigns. If you have older kids, you can also have them pay attention to like what's going on. My older kids, they were given the option. They didn't have to. One of them watched one of the debates with me, and they kind of hear what's going on because I'm interested in it. I don't share a lot about politics on this channel because I find it divisive, and it's not really what I'm trying to do on this channel, but they do hear about what's going on and such. So I have 2 picture books here. If I ran for president, so it talks about what they would do in the campaign process. Yep. And then this one here is Grace for President. I think this one comes before the other one, the Grace Goes to Washington. And I think she's running in like a mock election at her school. So yeah, so these are more about campaigning and how people become president, how they get elected, which is probably for the younger ones, not completely necessary to go through, but as you get older, it's interesting to know how the process works. I think it's helpful to know how the process works. My next topic, I guess, that we get into is the history a bit of the right to vote. So this is Elizabeth Leads the Way, which is Elizabeth Elizabeth, I don't know if it's Elizabeth Cady Stanton or Elizabeth Cady Stanton, but she's in the mid 1800s, and she was one of the earlier movement of suffragettes for women's right to vote. Of course, women didn't get the right to vote in the United States until 1919, I believe. Is that right? I'm hoping I'm correct about that. There is actually a new musical out. This is probably more for adults than for kids. That I think it's called Suffs. And I was listening to it the other day when I found out about it, and it's kind of cool. And it's she's, I think, one of the characters in it. But then it also focuses on the dynamics between the older generation of suffragettes that she represents and a younger generation that's kind of the end of the 1800s, beginning of the 1900s, and the more radical movement, the more radical actions that they took. And it really kind of was both of them together that got the right to vote. This is Lillian's Right to Vote. This is a beautiful book. It's a celebration of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It does kind of make me tear up and cry as I read it, but I'm kind of sensitive that way. So it kind of goes back, and it's her remembering her ancestors as she climbs that hill to vote and what they had to do to vote. So just a quick, if you don't know more about the history of the civil rights and Black people's right to vote in this country, I encourage you to go just learn some more about it. There are a ton of resources. This is a great one as an introduction for kids, but I don't know if you have like a really sensitive kid, you might want to aim it a little older. But basically, they were given, Black men were given the right to vote after the Civil War. But some things happened with Reconstruction that I won't get fully into right here. And there were a lot of barriers put in place to them being able to vote. So, and then of course the Black women got the right to vote when white women did. But for both Black men and women, up until the Voting Rights Act of 1965, there was a lot of barriers in place, especially in certain states, that made it really hard for them to vote. So, yes. Yeah. So I love the visual of her going up the hill and making it to the top to vote. I think it's just beautifully done. I highly recommend this book. Okay. Then this is a newer one for me, so I haven't read it yet, and it's a little long, so we might not read the whole thing. But it goes through kind of the evolving story of women in politics. Again, if you don't know what's going on in U.S. politics right now, currently we have Donald Trump, who was president before, running against Kamala Harris, who is the current vice president under President Biden. And she's only the second woman to be nominated as a major party presidential candidate in United States history. The first being Hillary Clinton, who lost to Donald Trump in 2016. So it's been a journey. We still haven't had a woman president. So this goes through kind of some of the history of those women. So it's interesting. Here, this is actually, she was the first female Supreme Court justice. Yeah, so it's not just president, but like different women in different areas of our government. And this is actually, she's British. I believe she was the first female prime minister in England. Yeah, that's a cool picture. Okay, so that's Madam President. And then last but not least, this is similar. It's Bold and Brave, 10 Heroes Who Won Women the Right to Vote. So this is kind of back to women's right to vote. The Madam President was more about women in the government and women leading in positions of power. There we go. Okay. Whew. don't know if you can see any of these. Those are all of my books that I have. Well, those are not all my books. Those are all the books I have for this unit to share with you, but I do want to share a couple more things. One, I encourage you to, if you're interested, click the link to the document, and I have some links to some YouTube videos there and some other videos on the electoral college system, because it is somewhat confusing. So I will do like a really quick primer, but it's confusing. So if you don't understand it, I don't blame you, and you can go do some more watching of videos to explain it. Probably better than me. But basically, instead of having a popular vote where everybody in the country votes and the person who wins the most votes in the country wins the presidency, it's a complicated system where each person votes in their state, and then each state sends a certain number of electors to the electoral college and they vote. And so the state the number of electors per state is supposed to be based on state population roughly. However, it's in most states what's called a winner-take-all system. So, for example, I'm going to take New York State because it's a big state near me. Our state only has, we have 3, I think, electoral votes, 3 or 4. So we're very small. New York has more. If let's see. Oh, I can see here. Actually, I'm up. So New York, I believe, has 29 votes. And because it's a winner-takes-all system, you could have, 40% of people vote for one person and 60% vote for another. You could actually even have, what happens in some states, 49% vote for one candidate and 51 vote for the other. But the one that gets 51, the candidate gets 51, gets all of those 29 electoral votes from New York State. And so it's not the same, it's not always the same outcome as what is the popular vote. So there has been several elections in modern history where the person who won the popular vote lost the election and did not become president. So it's important to know about the system. And there's also some conversation on whether it's a good system and what we should still be using. It was created as a result of compromise between the larger and smaller states during the forming of the Constitution. So, U.S. electoral college system. Definitely for older kids, high school, adults, even, like, it's confusing. But there's links here to some good videos that I will be watching with my kids and talking about with my kids. For the electoral college, just a couple more things. I have this game, can you see it? Runoff. The game of presidential campaigning. This is an old game. This is from when I was a kid. I had this at my parents' house. Pretty sure my dad and I used to play it. And so I'm going to make the kids play it with me. I don't think my oldest is going to be happy about this, but we're going to do it anyway, at least once. I enjoy it. It really, here, I'm going to open it for a second because it really helps you understand the electoral college and the winner-take-all system. Hang on. Okay. All right, I don't think you can see all of it, but you can see part of it. These are actually, because it's older, the numbers aren't really up to date as far as how much each state has. Because it adjusts based on the census. So there was obviously at least one, probably more done between when this game was made and now. But it does do the whole like winner takes all thing. It's a good way to get a grasp on how that works. I'm not sure if this one even exists anymore. It's an older one, but I did see some similar ones. Oh, it's a little dusty too, sorry. But I did see some similar ones. I don't know if they do the exact same thing, but other ones about like presidential campaigning. So if I can find some, I will link to them below. But yeah, we'll be doing that. The other thing I have on the electoral college system, and I just recommend in general that you can do with any age, is these are from an elections unit from suburbansnowwhite.com. So I did purchase this, and I printed these out. So there's a page for the kids to do predictions and the actual results on, well, say on election night. It's important to know, and probably to tell our kids as well, that the elections probably won't be settled. The election probably won't be settled on election night because they have to do all the counting, right? And so, like, if the polls close in California at, I don't know what time they close, 7, 8, that's like almost midnight or past midnight here on the East Coast where we are. And then they've got to count all those and make sure they're correct. And then there will probably be several states that are very close enough that they'll have to do, an audit or a recount. And that also takes a little bit of time. And then there might also be lawsuits they have to go through. So basically, we probably won't know the actual results right away, but it can be fun to kind of watch. Some of them are always the same. Some states, there's a lot of states actually that always go Democratic or Republican. So anyway, I have these and I printed enough out for several of my kids and me, and we will be doing that. Now I have a few extra ideas that you certainly don't need to do, but I'm going to share them with you just so you have them. I do have a YouTube video here that goes into gerrymandering, which is how the districts, so voting districts in states are formed by the state legislatures, and sometimes they are gerrymandered, which means that they are shaped in a way that is kind of odd, but that leads to a result that they want. So there's packing, where you pack all of one kind of voter, all voters that vote, that you think are going to vote one way, into one district and then have a bunch of others. And then there's cracking, where you might crack them apart. So there's a few districts, but they don't win those districts. And it's complicated, so I recommend watching this video because it explains it much better than me. Okay, I do have a little bit on the back here that I want to share. You could watch or talk about debates, the conventions. The conventions both already happened this year. I watched parts of them, and I did make my kids watch roll call for the Democratic one because it's kind of fun to see all the different states, and then I had them find the states on a map. So I made it into a bit of a lesson. But they also had songs this year for each state. There was like a DJ who was interesting, but it was kind of fun to have the songs for each state. It gave them a cool feel. Anyway, so I did that. You could also learn about, especially if you like high schoolers, you could research some historical campaigns that are especially famous. So like, even if you know Hamilton the musical, it talks about the election between Aaron Burr and Thomas Jefferson. And that was like really contentious, and the first time that they were like openly campaigning. But there's quite a few throughout history that have been quite scandalous and exciting in good and bad ways. And then I just have ideas for some activities. We probably won't do all of these, but these are some ideas. So you could have your students identify a few issues that are important to them and research where each candidate stands on those issues. You could have your kids write and or give a speech about an issue, or on why they should lead something or something else that we will vote on. So for example, if we are going to debate like maybe where we should go on a field trip between two choices that I give them, they could each choose one, and then I could have them each give a little argument as to why we should go to the one that they are representing. So something like that. You could look at and critique campaign ads. You could start a prompt of if I were president and have them share what they would do if they were president. You can graph the ages that presidents were when they were inaugurated. My daughter might really like that one because she likes graphing. And then I saw this idea, and now I'm not, it might be from 270towin.com, which is also a kind of fun website to explore where you can click on the map and kind of play with the map. And I'm not sure if this is where I found this information, but I copied this, and I should probably figure out where it's from so I can link it. But it's an idea for an election scavenger hunt. And it's to challenge students to search newspapers and other news resources to collect items on a scavenger hunt list. So this is the list. It's like newspaper about one candidate's campaign, article about the other candidate's campaign, a news article about an independent candidate's campaign, a photograph of each of the candidates, a photograph of an independent candidate, a cartoon that relates to them. So things like that. This is, again, for older kids, and I probably won't do this with my kids this year. I think I would wait until they're more like both middle school, high school age-ish for this kind of thing, because it also requires them to have some ability to search things on the internet and not go off into weird places. So yes, we're going to save that one, but I wanted to share in case you do have some older kids or high schoolers, that could be a fun activity. And then my other suggestion that somehow is you can't tell that it's separate, but is to have an election day party. And I really want to do this. I want to make some like flags themed treats and just like kind of celebrate, because, you know, I love a good excuse to celebrate. So those are my ideas. And I believe that's everything I have for you here. I love sharing this kind of stuff with you and with my kids. And I really encourage you as the teacher and parent to set an example of getting involved, learning about the issues, and make sure that you're registered to vote if you're eligible, and make a plan for how you're going to vote. Some states have early voting, some have mail-in, and some just have day of. I think most have some various options. There's always absentee ballots available if you are like somewhere else. For example, if you're living overseas, if you're like a service member or someone else living overseas, you can send in an absentee ballot, and I'm pretty sure those are going to start happening soon. And then if you're someone who hasn't been paying attention, maybe you just don't like to deal with politics, I do encourage you to look into some issues that you like. So it can get really overwhelming. If you just turn on the news and like say, you're gonna be hit with all sorts of information, and a lot of it is probably not gonna be helpful to you. So what I suggest is this: whether or not you've been paying attention, this could be a good exercise. Pick 1, 2, 3, 4, probably not more than 5 to start with, but pick a couple issues that are really important to you and you feel like really affect your life, or you just like are where your values are. And go on both major party candidates' websites, and see what their plans are, what their beliefs are on those issues. Now, I fully believe that no candidate, unless it is you, is going to 100% line up with you on every issue. It's like very rare that there's not some disagreement between people, right? And so I would look at what are the things that are most important to you and which candidate matches those more closely. So that's what I recommend doing. Instead of just getting bogged down in all the other stuff that's happening, really focus on that. If you're undecided, if you're not wanting to deal with all the mess that politics can be. And you can also talk to your kids about what issues they care about, and then have them look at, what the candidates say about that. Obviously, your kids, if they're under 18, they can't vote, but I always went with my father to vote, and I bring my kids along with me. I don't know, everywhere I've been has allowed you to bring kids in with you. And often people will give them little I voted stickers, which makes them very happy. Unfortunately, here we don't have stickers, which is sad. I don't know why. We're in a very rural location, so I guess they just don't have stickers. So, but either way, I like to bring them with me. I like to talk about who I'm voting for and why, more importantly, not just who, but like my thought process behind it in an age-appropriate way. And I am proud to do my civic duty. Someone is going to be elected whether or not you vote. So you might as well get your voice out there and vote. All right, friends, I hope you have fun with this reunit. If you have other suggestions for books and resources, let us all know in the comments below. And I hope you are all well and have a wonderful rest of your September. Bye, friends.